Hey everybody, welcome back to Fleetyards Mission Briefing. I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Kodan Armada. Hey everybody.
And today we are looking at a ship, because this is what we do on this show, look at sci-fi ships. This one, I'm not really sure what it is because the commander's announcing this one and it's kind of surprising me. So,
It's fun because you're like, what? And sometimes you know what they are, sometimes you really don't. And I'm like, Stuart, look at these 1080p renders and look at some of those real studio models and give me your thoughts. I'm gonna, because you're a clever man, Stuart. You're a Connie expert. You're a Trek expert. And I want to hear your thoughts. And we all do, because this is the Trekyards channel after all. Wow, that was a long.
what do you want, Commander? Do you want a promotion? Because it's like you're bucking for a promotion there.
I got a promotion once, and then we went back in time, I guess.
Oh yes.
Fleetyards.
Well,
So today, this is from a little movie you might have actually. I hope you've seen this movie. The movie was a 1984 movie called The Last Starfighter, and we're looking at the Rylan Gunstar.
nice. I love The Last Starfighter.
When was the last time we watched The Last Starfighter?
Probably 3 or 4 months ago.
Oh wow, okay. I made a
I grabbed it on Blu-ray really cheap, and
Nice.
I thought, oh, I'll have to watch it again. Threw it in and watch the behind the scenes. Rick Sternbach's on there, a young Rick Sternbach. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, did he do the paintings of the planets?
He was I forget what his title was. Production.
Did not know
artist
that.
or
That's
something.
awesome. That makes so much sense. I saw those planets. I was like, those are so matte paintings. They look familiar. That's anyway. Sorry. Yeah, I in preparation for this, I watched the movie in 2 parts. I watched it the first. I skipped through all the different character moments. I just watched the space stuff, and then I went back and I watched the character stuff because I was bored. Well, I was out away at a family trip, so I watched the whole film. So I know everything to know about this ship to talk to you about the Gunstar. But take me back to 1984, and you saw this in the cinema. I don't know when you saw it, but first impression of the Rylan Gunstar.
Well, I didn't see it in the theater. I know that. My brother introduced me to it.
Nice.
And I remember watching it at home with him, and he was super impressed, telling me about this new, CGI technology, and all the space scenes were done that way. And I thought, okay, cool. It looks like a cool ship. Like, I don't care. But looking back, it was a momentous achievement to do all these with the computers they had. To get all these space shots rendered in CGI was really impressive. And I remember thinking this thing looked kind of bulky, but didn't really bother me. I remember saying to my brother, well, it looks kind of bulky, and blah, blah, blah. I was kind of an asshole back then, And
Back
he's like,
then?
well, it's space, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be aerodynamic or, look like a fighter jet. I'm like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. But I was just a kid, so... so that was my thought on it. But now, there's just some fantastic elements to this thing that I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite sci-fi ships, actually. So,
Yeah, it's one of the ones I watched. I think I watched the film when I was like 10, and at that age, you see it for what it is. You don't see the CG, like you see it for what it is. And I think I really liked the story, and this guy who could do all this and ends up being the hero. And I thought it was a very cool craft because it was so maneuverable, like it was so able to do everything. Kick-ass shape, but this is a fan model. I love the detail on this, and you can see how the cockpit's put together and all different levels, and I love the style of this ship. But what really struck me about the ship is its firepower. I mean, it takes out the entire Kodan Armada very easily, and at the end, its Death Blossom was like, whoa. Although now watching the movie again, I've certainly gained a different perspective on the ship. I don't know, how do you rate it now? And I guess some of the CG, because we just hit on that for a second, because I saw it literally yesterday. So
CG is not great. Like, they do need to remaster it. But like I said, for the time, they were really pushing the production capabilities of what those computers could do and the time limits to hit them. They actually didn't think they could do it. So
Yeah, it was great to see CG, and actually the models are really detailed. The models are good. They're physically detailed, but there's almost no texture to any model. Like, the asteroids are completely untextured, and there's no lighting. They're just lit. Like, nothing's been lit from any direction, so it's just, everything's just flat. But I say good detail, but there's no actual, like, elegance to it. They just put things in scenes and made them move. And when you watch, my problem with the movie, in terms of this ship, is that, so there's meant to be a fleet of them. That's the whole point. They all get blown up. Yet one guy with 0 experience, apart from a video game, because he's the chosen one, whatever,
Yeah.
manages to win against the entire Armada, which also is a very bad Armada because no one even manages to hit him basically until the end, and then he gets hit by a lot, but then doesn't affect him, and then he wipes out the entire force. So,
and you got to remember too that the reason this one survived was because it was the new experimental prototype that was in the bay. It wasn't with the other ones. That's why it didn't get destroyed.
I heard the bay bit, didn't hear the experimental bit.
Yeah, this was the first one that had Death Blossom, and it hadn't gone through its trial runs and stuff yet. So
that makes sense. So that's interesting. So, but we see the other Gunstars that are the same shape and same design. But since so much of the like those retractable, which we'll see in a minute, retractable things, what do you think is in those with the pre-Death Blossom? Like, that's interesting. Like, there's so much space been taken up by missiles. What's being filled up with that?
It could also be missile storage on the other ones, just not in the Death Blossom launch mode where it spins and all that.
True.
That would be my thought.
But I just thought it was so incredibly easy to win with one. I can see why they try to take out many, because if the singles two-man fighter can take out everybody, I mean, this thing should be amazing in every. Imagine this in Star Wars. You know, the X-Wing versus Death Star. This thing versus Death Star and Armada. Just, you know, Return of the Jedi just comes in, fires, TIE fighters get blown up, goes against the Star Destroyer, fires, blows up, goes into the Death Star, Death Blossom, hits the core, goes out. And they're like, "You did it!" It's like, we defeated the Empire. And it's like, yeah, it's easy. We've done it before. It's just, anyway. I just thought it was kind of funny just watching it back, how simple the film is, and yeah, but the ship is still awesome. I just want to get that off my chest, Stuart. But looking at the design, what do you think looking at this model? And I mean, like I said, I love how detailed this model is, and you can see the interior and you can see the people and things. What do you think?
Well, one of the things I see when I see this model, like I said with mission briefings before, I always see new things, and with this, I kind of see bits and pieces that, like, look at the front cockpit. It looks a lot, very, 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 a lot, very much, a lot like a Star Trek work bee, kind of plugged into a rear module.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
And then it's also got the X-Wing kind of configuration, probably inspired by Star Wars a little bit. So I see a lot of elements from things that had come before that I never really noticed before. But as we say with the show, it gives us new takes on old ships. So
what I quite like about this, I mean, if you know, the wiki about this is, you know, literally you can put it all on one screen. There's nothing. They don't explain it. They don't go into it at all. But it's got lasers, photon bolts, and particle beams. So you can see the little turrets, which are kind of like, the bottom is like a security camera almost. You know, the little red. And those are where the lasers come out, and the missiles come out of other areas. And I like that it's all sort of integrated. Like, it's a very heavily armed ship when you look at it. Obviously, it has to be. And I do like the fact that he's in that swivel chair, and it's very much like a fighter jet. You know, the top gunner position where he's shooting the machine gun. It's very much inspired by that. Although, wow. And they don't, you know, if you look at their helmets, I mean, there's no oxygen apparatus. So they're very vulnerable. Like, they are vulnerable beyond vulnerable. You know, it's not like they're in a recessed chair. There's actually a dome of glass. And they, you know, it's like, but that happens, I suppose. Just feels very vulnerable in this one.
I think it's safe to say it's probably not glass. It might be transparent aluminum, or what did they call it?
Transparent steel?
Yeah, in the X-Wing, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I just love the dimensions. Like, it wouldn't work, this design, if it just ended at that back pilot. If that was just if that was just a nose. But the fact that it then it comes down a step, goes out, it's very flat, has another thing coming off, that gives it such an interesting design, I think, and that's why I think that it really pops for me, just having that dimensionality, and the fact that, you know, and we'll see pictures of it later on, they don't land like that. It lands vertical, so you have to go up a ladder, and then you get in there, it moves around. Like, it's a very interesting sort of craft. I mean, it was the hero of the show, of the whole movie. Yeah. I mean, this was, and they did definitely do it justice, except the lack of texturing for the asteroids, which annoyed me no end.
Well, yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Don't you think a remastered version of this movie would be incredible, though? Just redoing all the CG?
Yeah, wouldn't even be difficult. I mean, yeah. But, Stuart, scale. Now, this one's a bit of an easier one to guess, given we can physically see people, but what do you think scale-wise? Compare it to something else we know. How much bigger is it to something, to another thing? What's it comparable to, do you think? Because I have a rather fun picture when we get to it in a sec.
Well, judging by the cockpit and kind of the wingspan, it's almost TIE fighter size. It's a lot more bulk than a TIE fighter, but really size-wise, I can't see it being so much bigger.
Right.
Even compared to like an X-wing, I think it's pretty much X-wing.
Didn't actually think to put a TIE fighter in this next shot, so I can't help you there.
Oh, well. I think lengthwise it's probably about the same as an X-wing, although the pilot's up front instead of at the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe I'd say a runabout from Star Trek is probably a little bit bigger than it. Not too much.
What's interesting about this ship is that it's such... I mean, I think people know about The Last Starfighter as a film. People know about the Gunstar, but they didn't go into any real details here. So scaling was such an issue with this, because there is no scale. And people obviously guessed it, but there's no like official scaling chart. So if you go to the next picture, though, you can see a little scale chart I did. Yeah. Now, the fun bit about this scale chart is that everything there is from the show, basically. The runabout is a fan model, but I scaled it to the exact size. Obviously, the Gunstar is a fan model, but the Death Glider there is the one from the show. The Viper is the one from the show. The Type 9 is the fighter from the show, and the Star Fury from Babylon 5. So it's all accurate sizes, and I had to scale the Gunstar based on the Viper, because the Viper, you have people in the fighters, and they're scaled to people. So I just matched up a person in the Viper to the person model in the Gunstar, made that 1-to-1, and then that equated the size. So that's the sizing. What do you think compared to these different sci-fi universes?
It comes off as a little bit bigger than I anticipated. Not too much. I mean, I did mention the runabout, which is it's ironically about the size of it. I thought it was a little bit smaller.
Yeah, it's like 4/5 of a runabout.
Yeah, I thought it would be more X-wing size, which is probably X-wing size is probably closer to the Viper as well.
Yeah, so I had a look, and the Type 9 is 8.5 meters, and an X-wing is 12.5. Sorry, so it's a good 4 meters bigger. So it's a
wow.
Yeah, it's a bit bigger. It's probably about 2-ish thirds the size of the Gunstar.
Wow, that's surprising, actually. I'd like to see a comparison between a Viper and an X-wing, then. I thought the X-wing and Vipers were pretty comparable in size, but...
Vipers are really small. Like,
True.
Seriously. I mean, look at that. I mean, they are so compact and just neat. Like, it's actually very impressive when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's difficult, because the runabout has always felt to me like a fighter, but it's not. It is a starship. You've got 2 people at the front, but it's also got side consoles, so it is very much like a 6-person cockpit plus other rooms. So that's a full craft. The Type 9 is a 1-person manned craft, but it's got a decent sized back cabin. The Star Fury is a single person, but it's very standing up big, and then the Viper's obviously a single person. The Death Glider is 2-person. So it's interesting how it's scaled, but it's also just that some go for very compact size, some go for functionality. And you can see how much more advanced, Star Trek is. I mean, the Type 9, whatever, Gunstar, I mean, we don't see it with FTL. I watched the movie, they don't say FTL, but I don't know how far things are away. You don't really get a sense of scale in that movie, so I'm assuming they just have very fast propulsion, but I don't know. I don't think it would have FTL. It doesn't seem that sort of craft.
The one thing I would like to see in the scale chart that didn't include, well, obviously the X-Wing, TIE Fighter, and possibly the Delta Flyer.
Yes.
Because I'm kind of wondering where the Delta Flyer falls. I can't remember how big it is compared to the Runabout.
Well, Delta Flyer does change in scale sometimes, so I thought best safe go with the ships we know the size of. That was my logic behind this.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, it does. To me, it says that the Gunstar is actually pretty bulky for its size. It's not this refined ship. It is a big bulk. Like, it is less advanced than a lot of this other stuff. Even, I mean, the Death Glider, and I mean, the Viper just has machine guns. It doesn't have missiles. It doesn't have any of these other weaponry. But I would love to see a Viper versus a Gunstar. Like, it's like the little fly versus the the bigger animal. But maneuverability, because the Gunstar is pretty damn maneuverable. But compare the two, what do you think?
Initially, I'd say the Viper could probably outmaneuver it and fly circles around it. But at the same time, with the way that the Gunstar has its engines positioned, it is very maneuverable, and it can... I think would surprise us. I think it's much more maneuverable than the Runabout or any of the other ships that we see here. The Viper in it, I think, are pretty much. It would be a good dogfight to see for sure.
Yeah,
but I think compared to like the bulkier Starfleet ships, I think the Gunstar is way more maneuverable.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a fighter craft. I mean, just you can see on the ship the vents. You know, it's got those aft engines, but it's got these big RCS thruster vents, and the Viper has the same. But since it's a smaller craft, it has less thrust. So maybe even though it's a bigger ship, the much bigger thrust gives it that. You know, I mean, it turns at a dime, and the Viper can do that mostly. But it'd be interesting to see who can do those corners. But yeah, I thought it was just a fun scale chart to just show you how it is a bit big compared to other universes. But it is a two-man fighter with other space. You know, I'm sure you could probably standish in that cockpit and crawl. I mean, there's things you can do that other ships, like Death Glider, very much is like just the heads then the ceiling. So, yeah.
All right, so if we go to the next picture, it's the same scale chart but from the side. And here's kind of what I expected. The side's a lot bulkier on the Gunstar, even than the Runabout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like using real models. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, it's cool to see the comparisons.
Yeah, it just comes across as a big ship, you know.
Yeah. Vipers are small. I didn't think they were that small.
Pretty efficient. Yeah. Pretty efficient.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say. I mean, it's just it's interesting.
All right, cool. Well, things are interesting, Stuart, but the next picture is the Gunstar from the back. You can see those big engines. What I'm assuming is aft weapons, those little things on the sides.
I would think so.
I don't know, what do you think? Lots of those things, isn't there?
Yeah, there are landing legs on this thing when it lands vertically. So that would take up a lot of that. Well, not a lot, but a bit of that bulk that we thought was missile storage and stuff. So,
and there's even a lift that comes out of it. So,
yeah,
so,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if this thing is off doing its war thing, gets damaged, has to land on a planet, and then you can't get back in the ship, so you need to make it self-sustaining. So you have to get an elevator and a ladder. It's very strange. They have both, but they wanted the dramatic scene at the end, where they go up being a lift as opposed to bye. Doesn't really work as well.
That's true. It's the size of the engines and just for overall storage and stuff. I'm wondering what it's fueled by, because engines that size would require a lot of fuel, I would imagine. And if you're on an extended mission, like, where's the fuel tanks? What does it run on?
Well, can I ask you a secondary question to that? These are, and we've seen the scale, these are big engines. Do you think they're big because they're low-tech, bulky, or are they big because they're actually reasonably high-tech, but very high-functioning?
I think they're high-tech and high-functioning, and also a really incredible fuel source, hence why there's not a whole bunch of bulk for fuel storage. I mean, those side pods, there's probably a lot of room in there for fuel storage, as well as missiles, but you really want your fuel stored right beside your missiles.
To be fair, it's possible that if you're right, this is the first Death Blossom, then the previous ones could have been a standard version has the fuel in those components, but then they have Death Blossom version, which was obviously designed for this mission. Like, it's going to be, if you're in a fighter wing, then the other ship can maybe grapple you back home. If you have three gun blossoms, Death Blossoms in the Armada, the rest of them have the higher fuel, they can still get your crew back. So maybe that's like that. So there's less space, but otherwise it'd be filled with fuel. So I agree. I mean, you've got to have a lot of fuel, but then maybe you've got compacted fuel or liquid fuel or.
My thinking on that would be the regular Gunstars would then go out and tangle with all the enemy fighters, clear out the fighter squadrons, make room for the ones that have Death Blossom to come in. So it's just, these ones don't have to dogfight. They don't have to worry about extra fuel for that kind of maneuvering. They can just fly straight in, do their Death Blossom thing, and get out. And the regular fighter squadron would, go in before them and clear the way, basically.
Yeah, I concur absolutely. That's a great idea. But I mean, if you don't, the normal versions might not even have missiles at all. I mean, they might just have the lasers and that might be the extra thing. So you think all this space being filled up, but it could literally just be those little turrets. So all of the back components in the normal version could just be fuel and the hardware, which I think made this feel more realistic as a craft, or at least practical.
All right, so the next picture is just another shot from the back, but from the bottom.
Yeah, I do the same pictures each time, so it depends what detail there is different.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on that's different in this one.
You can see the vents on the side. I think it's quite nice detail. It needs to be cooled, I guess.
I'd have to go back and rewatch the movie. I'm just wondering about the landing struts. Because those black things that stick out, the four of them,
yes,
if they just extended out, they would make good landing struts. But I don't think that's what they look like, to be honest.
Well, we might be able to see landing struts in a couple of pictures. Who knows?
Oh, well. Okay, fine then. Moving right along.
To the next picture, which is a front view, and you get to see those guns even more. I mean, assuming that the front one is a gun, the side ones are those balls, and then the little ones. I mean, this is pretty decked out.
Well, it is called a Gunstar. That's its purpose. I know, right?
Although, okay, now do you remember in the modern military, there's that ship, a plane that has that ball at the front of it. It's like a laser pointer. Did that come before this, or is this maybe the inspiration for that? Because that's such a design cue.
I think they probably came out about the same time. It's like the Apache helicopters. Wherever the pilot looks with his helmet is where the gun on the bottom goes automatically.
Yes.
And that's exactly what the Gunstar is. Wherever your chair turns is where the gun turns. So I think, and the Apache it came out in the early 80s. So this is probably based on that tech, but it's not far off from being developed at about the same time. So yeah, that's what I would imagine it was based on.
And what do you think about the idea of you actually physically have to turn to fire? I mean, they do it in Star Wars, I suppose, but the primary weapon is you got to physically turn. And what do you think about that as a function?
I think it's fantastic because you're looking at exactly what you're aiming for, and the guy in the back can pilot the ship while you're doing that. Because I'm sure he can take over controls for navigation and stuff. He is back there for that kind of purpose.
Well, I'm assuming
the pilot can also fly once the chair's locked.
Yeah. But I assume the secondary guy would be the primary pilot, though. That was my assumption. I thought the first guy is the gunner, the second guy is the pilot. Which is different than like an F-14, let's say, that has two seats, because you got your pilot and you got your RIO, and the RIO, or rear interception officer, is the guy that takes care of your radar, all your missiles, that kind of thing. The pilot is responsible for just flying it and shooting, but the guy in the back is responsible for navigation and things like that. So this is kind of slightly different because the guy in the front on this, with the way the canopy is enclosed, has a lot more visibility. So to spin your chair and actually see targets would be a lot easier for him. So that's interesting. I hadn't considered that the right at the bottom turret moves with the chair. I assumed I don't know why I assumed it. It makes a lot of sense, but it's interesting. I like it.
Yeah. All right. So next picture, directly from the front, and this thing is pretty badass looking. So I'm wondering what the things are on the front of those engines, whether they're intakes of some kind or reverse thrust.
Ooh, yeah, that.
Yeah, you think?
Oh, yeah.
It would make maneuvering a lot easier. You fire the left-hand front ones and the rear right ones, and you could spin really quick.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, you can see those bulbous things on either side of all of them. They're the side thrust, you got the front thrust, you got the back thrust. Yeah, I mean, that would be super functional then. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need weapons since you've got, all the rotating guns and the four front ones, and then obviously the missile launchers just open up and fire. I mean, this is a pretty nicely designed, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, it doesn't need to be aerodynamic. And a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't look fast or sleek, but it's in space. So, I mean, I don't see an issue with that. As a kid, I did, but that's because I was an idiot.
just then.
Hey.
But I do like, though, just how I love the guys who put 3D models of characters in there, because it really comes alive. Kind of feels like a real model. And look at the reflection. It's just It's a great model list. I can't wait to see it. Well, the full episode when we reach our 1,000 Patreon goal. We can do full episodes, and we can see this in high def. Flying around and doing all these cool things that we just couldn't see in the movie to the same level of crisp detail. There's things, there's reasons. But the next picture is a close up on the fuselage. I love that little dip detail, and there's just things happening, and look at that. I mean, he really modeled this thing. Look at that canopy, all the detail. I really like this.
The back canopy is interesting the way it's designed. I don't know if I would have personally done that kind of step thing. I think one integrated piece might have looked a little bit better, but I think it's neat.
Should he not be higher to actually see anything?
Well, to be fair, he's probably got like radar monitors and stuff like in front of him, so that he can see kind of what's going on with those.
But if you put him just like 2 foot higher, and there's obviously space. Again, this could be this fan model, whatever. But if he was slightly higher, then he could just see over it, and then he'd have even better visibility. He'd be able to see, everywhere. But I think he's definitely looking forward into the groove of the transparency.
Much like the forward seat, that seat probably moves. So it could probably move up, because you got to think they crawl in through the bottom of this ship and have to crawl to their seats when it's landed. So that seat must move out of the way, because you got to get the pilot.
He swivels back, then goes up.
Yeah.
That would you'd assume it would be able to go up and down.
Maybe when they're in certain situations, that seat can lift up so you can get better visibility. And then for just normal cruising, it just slides down and
it just chills.
Yeah.
Yeah, better.
I love how the pilot can spin around and like talk face to face with the guy in the back.
Rewatching the movie, I kept thinking, wow, just the shots of this actor in this chair, like the alien, is like he's literally just on a little soundstage talking to nobody. Like he's not the most exciting. At least he's got the energy, but there's not even any L cars or around him. He's just like sitting in a chair, talking to a dude. The other guy he's in this whole Starfield. He's got this whole fighter thing. And the guy behind him is just like, hello.
Grig's awesome.
Yeah. You're next.
Next picture is the doors opened up for Death Blossom.
Yes, the model didn't. The actual internal, because it's a separate part of the model, so the internal doors don't open, but obviously they would be open and the missiles would be there. But just shows you what it looks like with it all open, and really adds a certain aggressive / wind, catching thing that happens when what's the word? Satellite comes down to another planet. The whole umbrella thing, but parachute thing. But what do you think? What do you think of Death Blossom then, and the concept?
I think it's a fantastic idea. It's a little crazy, but as a last ditch resort weapon, I mean, it's very interesting. Because, like we've said before, this thing is very maneuverable with the thrusters it has. So to actually just spin it around and say, whatever, let's use that, works for me. Although, I'd be afraid that I'd be spinning so fast that I'd launch a missile, it wouldn't get all the way out of the bay, it would get hit by the ship moving, and, I'd end up blowing myself up. But
that's why this is Gunstar F.
I'm sure there's safeguards in place for that kind of thing anyway.
No, there were lots of failed attempts. One thing that I never got while watching that is that the whole point of the movie is he's an exceptional guy who can target. Like he's not been trained. All he's been trained on is these 2 joystick things. Mm-hmm. That's it. The understanding of it to use those to target. That's his skills. That's why he's the chosen one. So the whole movie he's able to do well, taking out things, all that jazz. But then Death Blossom, it's not realistic that he's actually targeting things as he's spinning, because the spinning is only like 2 seconds. I mean, it's super fast. So surely the computer's targeting everything.
It's not targeting anything. That's the thing, though. There's this sphere that all the ships have to be in. It just randomly just shoots. It just goes and does its thing.
But it shoots every single fighter, though.
Well, the missiles do seek. The missiles do seek.
Right. Okay.
So they're probably like heat-seeking or sensor-guided missiles.
Right.
It's not like they just shoot straight. So it just launches everything it can in that amount of time, and if it's in that sphere of the range of the missiles, it'll lock on and it does follow them.
Okay, I get the missiles, but otherwise it feels a bit like, it's like in Nemesis, you know, zero elevation. There's a lot of space to not hit, and if a thing moves, I mean, you won't be able to hit every fighter. But okay, I'd buy that. But then, I guess it's also so you're difficult to hit.
Hit the ship?
Well, because I mean, why not just fire all your missiles at the front? Then, if they're all going to be seeking, why not? Why randomly? I guess they're all around you in a big pattern.
It looks cool on screen.
Yeah.
It's just a movie, Samuel. Don't think too much into it.
I'm sorry. But the next picture was you thinking into it, and this is the landing sequence, both the long shot and the close up. And well done for the dude having made the model.
So I was right. Those black things are where the legs come down and extend out. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense then. So there is no storage of the landing legs in those bulky parts.
No, just the black bits.
Yeah,
back of them anyway.
That's very cool.
It looks great landed, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Yeah, and I never would have thought to land a ship like that if I was designing one. I'd always land it like an X-wing, you know. But that's very neat.
It makes sense though. It's easier to build the struts in. You've got the thrust.
Yeah.
Everything. It makes sense.
Getting in a chair must be difficult with all that gravity pulling you down and having to.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure the chairs kind of probably move and turn. So you sit properly, and then you strap in, and then it moves into position.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's got anything left to say about this picture?
What's that?
Got anything left to say about this picture before we go on to the last one? If we go on to the last picture, my closing thoughts for the Gunstar is that it actually feels pretty well thought out. Having talked through with you, I definitely feel they've had there's things that needs to be in this to do in the story, and they've hit those beats. But also, there's a lot of function beyond that to make it feel like a mostly fully fleshed out fighter. What was your final thought?
I never really gave the ship too much thought. I just thought it was a neat sci-fi ship. But yeah, looking at it, there's a lot of functionality, and there's a lot of tie-ins with modern military. Like I said, it's got that F-14 2 operator component, as well as the Apache sighted gun, which I think is a fantastic idea. So it was well thought out and very cleverly designed. And I would like to see a remastered version. I really would.
Like a super high def detailed model and even more functions and yeah, I do think a little bit overpowered. But you know, hey.
Well, they did use some trickery. They waited for the whole armada to pass before they attacked the main ship. They didn't fly through the whole fighter squadron. You know, strategy and all that jazz.
Anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed this Fleetyards mission briefing and look at a ship from all the big sci-fis. If you want to support this show and get the full episodes with all the renders, animations,
Facts.
other scale things, facts, figures, clips from the movies, all that jazz, then please go to Patreon and support the show, because when we reach our $1,000 goal, monthly goal on Patreon, then we will start these amazing full-on episodes coming out. And you've seen this show now for many weeks. We've got some great stuff, and we've teased you with some of those studio models in this show, and they'll all come out at some point as well, and boy is it fun to work with them. So.
Exactly. So tune in again next time, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video around, and yeah, until next time, this is the last Fleetyards. I mean, no, for the last Starfighter Fleetyards mission briefing. Yes, it's not the last Fleetyards. Come back for more. But anyway, bye. I'm Captain Foley.
I got guns.
See you, everybody.